Amid the towering skyline of a bustling metropolis, a grand amusement park sprawled across several acres of prime city land. By day, this place, known as Nightfall Springs, offered family-friendly delights, swirling carousels, colorful teacup rides, and squeals of joy echoing from the roller coaster. Vendors sold cotton candy and popcorn while costume mascots posed for photos with eager children. Yet when autumn arrived, the park changed its rhythm. Every October, the management transformed Nightfall Springs into a realm of spooky festivities, hoping to thrill evening visitors with creative frights and macabre enchantments. By late afternoon, skeletons dangled from lampposts, jack-o'-lanterns glowed along every pathway, and sinister music replaced the usual cheerful tunes. As October progressed, the park launched its renowned late-night event, Dread Hours at Nightfall Springs. Parents escorted excited teenagers through the gates, while adults seeking a more immersive scare ventured in with nervous anticipation. The staff decorated every ride to evoke a haunted aesthetic, cobwebs draping the ticket booths, cryptic warning signs posted near queue lines, and masked actors roving the walkways to startle unsuspecting guests. Fog machines shrouded corners in eerie mists, and haunting sound effects resonated from hidden speakers. On such a night, Rowan, the park's dedicated head of security, supervised the entire operation. He had served in that role for 11 years, fostering a deep familiarity with both the park's modern attractions and the lesser-known corners where old rides had been dismantled or quietly abandoned. He understood the unique challenges Dread Hours could pose: low lighting, throngs of costumed thrill seekers, and elaborate sets that sometimes led to confusion or minor injuries. While he relished the energy of the season, he was always prepared for unexpected incidents. Late one chilly evening, the clock approached midnight. Dread Hours was in full swing, with shrieks and nervous laughter echoing across the property. Rowan walked the park's perimeter, radio clipped to his belt, exchanging routine updates with other security personnel. He passed through a section called the Haunted Midway, where guests navigated a labyrinth of carnival games rebranded with ghoulish themes. Nearby, a stage magician performed illusions involving ghosts and disappearing skeletons, prompting wide-eyed gasps from onlookers. In the midst of his patrol, Rowan received a call from dispatch. A visitor had complained about someone in a menacing clown costume, acting strangely near the vintage carousel. By itself, that might not have been alarming. After all, costume staff were everywhere. But the caller insisted this particular clown exuded a disquieting presence, standing motionless beside the carousel and staring at passers-by in a way that unsettled everyone. Rowan acknowledged the report. He was well aware that the Carousel of Dreams, built decades ago, was considered the heart of the park. Its carved wooden horses bore chipped paint from a bygone era, adding to the nostalgic charm. Families usually adored it, especially earlier in the evening. Yet after dark, it took on a more evocative quality. The pony's eyes seemed to shimmer in the dim lights, and the music box tunes played in minor keys for Dread Hours, giving the ride a vaguely unnerving aura. Upon arriving at the carousel, Rowan found a cheerful scene of swirling lights and costumed guests waiting their turn to ride. At first, he spotted nothing amiss. Actors portraying wicked witches and rotting zombies interacted with visitors, eliciting delight and uneasy giggles. But off to one side stood a tall figure dressed in a tattered clown costume, its fabric stained and frayed around the edges. While most cast members maintained a certain theatrical flair, this clown seemed unnaturally still, with a face mask or makeup that accentuated an exaggerated grin. Rowan approached, weaving between the queue lines. "Excuse me," he said, voice firm but polite. The clown's head tilted in his direction, revealing large painted eyes and a disturbingly wide smile. "Is something wrong, sir?" the clown asked in a soft, mocking tone. Rowan was immediately put on alert. The park employed many scare actors, but all staff wore identifiable lanyards or security passes. He saw none on this individual. "I've had a complaint about your behavior. May I see your employee badge?" he asked, keeping things professional. The clown's smile widened. "I'm afraid I don't work here," came the response. "I'm just having the time of my life." Rowan's experience told him that unapproved costumes were not allowed, especially if they alarmed guests or disrupted the event's flow. "In that case, I'll have to ask you to leave," he said. "The park's policy is clear about unauthorized costumes during dread hours." A low chuckle escaped the clown's lips. "I've only just begun," the figure replied, voice dripping with amusement. Before Rowan could press further, the clown broke into a sudden sprint, dodging past a group of startled guests. In a flash, the costumed figure vanished into the throng of visitors near a row of carnival stands. Startled, Rowan spoke urgently into his radio, alerting his team. Then he followed, weaving through the serpentine path leading deeper into the park. The chase continued past the roller coaster's exit, where flashing lights and fog machines disoriented him momentarily. He glimpsed the flicker of a clown shoe and followed it toward the older part of Nightfall Springs, an area seldom open to the public. Once upon a time, this section housed popular attractions, but shifting interests and safety codes led to closures. Despite the place being off limits, Rowan realized it made for an ideal hiding spot for someone seeking secrecy. He reached a rusted gate marking a boundary to the sunken court, a zone of chipped statues and collapsed booths that the park had never bothered to demolish. Farther along, an old funhouse, boarded up for years, rose like a crumbling monument. Its faded sign read, "House of Mirrors," and peeling paint revealed glimpses of the bright artwork that once enticed visitors inside. According to park lore, the ride had shut down following a series of mechanical failures and spooky rumors, making it the perfect location for urban legends. The gate stood ajar, obviously tampered with. Rowan eyed the path beyond. He called dispatch again, but the line only crackled, the signal too weak in that corner of the park. Determined not to lose his quarry, he stepped through, his flashlight sweeping across warped boards and broken pieces of old attraction props. The air felt stale, and a faint, musty odor lingered, as though the entire area had been entombed in dust. A motion ahead caught his eye. The clown's silhouette slipped through the battered entrance of the funhouse. In the partial moonlight, the structure appeared ominous. On either side of the entrance, grotesque clown faces, leftover decorations from a long-ago era, gaped with silent laughter. Their chipped eyes glinted in the gloom. Rowan steadied himself, refusing to let hesitation override his duty. Inside, The darkness pressed in. His flashlight revealed a narrow corridor leading into what had once been a maze of mirrors. Shattered glass littered the floor, and the surviving mirrors stood at odd angles, reflecting stripes of dim light. Somewhere in the distance, water dripped in a persistent rhythm. Each footstep sent echoes bouncing down unseen halls. A soft giggle reverberated from somewhere up ahead. Rowan advanced carefully, scanning the environment for signs of movement. The corridor opened into a larger room with mirrors extending from floor to ceiling, many cracked or clouded with grime. Fragments of his own reflection peered back at him, distorted into elongated shapes. He paused to get his bearings, uncertain which way led deeper inside and which might lead to an exit. "Looking for me?" a voice called, seeming to come from every reflection at once. Rowan tried to pinpoint the direction, but found only warped versions of himself. Then a figure moved at the edge of a mirror, the clown, drifting between reflective panels like a specter. Rowan raised his voice. "The park is private property. You need to come out where I can see you." "What fun is that?" the clown responded, the tone laced with mockery. A new corridor branched off to the left, lined by mirrors that bent outward. Rowan inched forward, mindful of each step. The clown's reflection flickered in the corner of his eye, disappearing whenever he tried to track it. "This can end without trouble," Rowan insisted, though he doubted the clown intended a peaceful conclusion. He caught a fleeting movement. The clown darted behind a broken mirror, quick enough to vanish from view. Rowan moved to follow, but paused at the threshold of a small chamber that appeared to be a dead end. The space was piled with old mechanical gears from a defunct ride, plus a few wooden boards and a collapsed shelf. A faint, scuffing sound signaled that someone was near. Suddenly, a figure sprang into the open. The clown's costume was more ragged up close, with flaking paint on a mask that depicted a grin far too wide for human proportions. The clown's gloved hands revealed spidery fingers, one of them brandishing a short, glinting blade. Rowan stepped back, adopting a guarded stance. He had undergone security training, including the basics of self-defense, but he also recognized the vulnerability of being alone in a secluded area with no immediate backup. "Don't be frightened," crooned the clown. "These are just illusions. After all, isn't that the spirit of the Funhouse?" Rowan maintained a careful distance, searching for any route behind him that might lead back to the corridor. "There's no reason for violence," he said, voice steady. The clown tilted his head as if considering the statement. "Violence? That's such a bleak term. I'm here to deliver a real scare." In a sudden burst of movement, the clown swiped at the air in front of Rowan, the blade leaving a faint glimmer in the dusty light. Rowan sidestepped, bringing up an arm to ward off a direct attack. He quickly realized the clown was more agile than expected. The intruder advanced, forcing Rowan to retreat deeper into the scattered debris. With limited space to maneuver, he felt his back brush against a twisted piece of metal. He tried his radio again, but only static reached his ears. "Why are you doing this?" Rowan asked, speaking in an even tone despite the tension rising within him. The clown's laughter resonated across the funhouse walls, reflected countless times by shattered mirrors. because this place deserves real fear. It's too staged otherwise, just a show for paying customers who want a quick scare and a snack. But we both know terror runs deeper than special effects. Rowan glanced around for anything he could use to defend himself or create distance. He noticed a length of broken pipe half hidden beneath a discarded wooden plank. He reached down, grabbed it, and held it at the ready. The clown took a half step back, letting the blade tap lightly against the floor. For a moment, neither moved, their eyes locked in a silent standoff. Elsewhere in Nightfall Springs, the event continued. Rides clattered, guests shrieked, and costumed staff roamed the park's main pathways, unaware that their head of security was engaged in a game of cat and mouse. Music from the roller coaster drifted in faintly through the rotted walls, a dissonant reminder of normalcy existing just outside this abandoned place. In a blur of motion, the clown lunged. Rowan swung the pipe, striking the intruder's arm with enough force to disrupt the angle of the blade. The weapon clattered against a rusted gear on the floor. The clown stumbled but let out another jarring laugh as if delighting in the confrontation. Rowan took the opportunity to dart around the makeshift chamber, aiming for the corridor that led back into the main mirror maze. Yet the clown pursued with unsettling speed, close enough that Rowan could hear each footstep echo on the worn concrete. A gloved hand grabbed at Rowan's jacket, yanking him off balance. He twisted free, only to lose his flashlight as it fell onto the ground, casting wild beams across fractured mirrors. Darkness claimed half the corridor, leaving Rowan disoriented by the swirling reflections. Now, hissed the clown, running away so soon. The figure slid into a mirrored panel, melding with the swirling illusions. In one mirror, Rowan caught a glimpse of the clown's grotesque grin. Another reflection showed the clown's back. It was impossible to determine which image was real and which was a trick of the angles. Rowan slowed, trying to listen over the rasp of his own breathing. The silence weighed heavily, somehow more intense than any scream. Then a soft rasp came from his left. He turned, pipe held out, only to confront a reflection of himself. The corridor bent, creating a fishbowl effect. A shape flitted behind him. He spun, catching a glimpse of that painted grin. He swung the pipe, only to hit air and reflect it off a mirror. The blow nearly caused him to lose his balance. The clown's voice floated. This place was always meant for illusions. Do you like them? Ignoring the taunt, Rowan forced himself to remain calm. He moved carefully, focusing on escaping the mirror maze. Although he had never been inside the old Funhouse since its closure, he recalled general blueprints from the park's archives. An exit should lie on the far side, past a series of twisting passages. If he could just find that path, he could circle back and call for help. A fork in the corridor presented two options, both lined with more mirrors. He tested the left one, only to discover a collapsed passage filled with smashed glass and rotted wood. Doubling back, he slipped into the right passage, which led to a ramp descending into a lower chamber. The air grew colder there, and dripping water suggested a leak from above. Pale moonlight sneaked through cracks in the ceiling, giving just enough illumination to move forward. Yet the clown was not far behind. A sharp cackle broke the silence as Rowan sensed movement overhead. The clown had climbed onto a ledge that once served as part of a second-level walkway. From that vantage, the figure observed Rowan's progress, stepping lightly across precarious beams. A sudden, flitting shape appeared, dropping from above. Rowan lunged aside at the final moment, skidding on damp flooring. The clown landed near him, blade reclaimed, glinting in the faint light. They faced each other amid puddles and scattered debris. The space was tight, pillars from the old funhouse structure standing at intervals. Rowan saw what looked like a corridor beyond the clown, likely a final route leading outside. Summoning his training, Rowan feinted left, drawing the clown's attention, then pivoted right, aiming to slip around him. The clown lashed out with the knife, forcing Rowan to dodge and lose momentum. Still, Rowan pressed forward, using the length of pipe to block the clown's swings. Every clang echoed like a bell, magnified by the cavernous chamber. Trickles of water from the ceiling gave the moment an otherworldly atmosphere, as if they battled in some forgotten undercroft rather than an amusement park. With each exchange, Rowan felt the futility of reason. This intruder craved chaos and seemed intent on carrying out a twisted performance, fueled by the excitement of a real-life terror. In a moment of clarity, Rowan noticed a heavy support beam leaning precariously behind the clown. Likely rotted at the base, it might give way if struck with enough force. Carefully baiting the clown into a new attack, Rowan sidestepped at the last second and struck the beam with the metal pipe. The wood creaked, fractured, then toppled. The clown, caught off guard, scrambled to avoid the falling beam. It collided with part of the ceiling, sending splinters and dust into the air. The intrusion of debris momentarily separated the two, granting Rowan a precious window of escape. He bolted past the collapsing remnants, ignoring the clown's renewed laughter. The corridor led up a short flight of rickety stairs, at the top of which an exit door stood half open. He could see the silhouette of the park's perimeter lights in the distance. Relief coursed through him as he burst outside, stumbling onto a weed-choked lot behind the funhouse. Old fences and rusted machinery lay scattered. He glanced over his shoulder, searching for any sign of pursuit. The clown did not immediately appear, perhaps pinned by the debris, or perhaps lurking in the gloom, waiting for a moment to continue the chase. With no desire to linger, Rowan raced across the lot, hopped a low fence, and found himself at the edge of the main park grounds. A pair of security staff patrolling a distant walkway spotted him and hurried over, alarmed by his disheveled state. Rowan quickly recounted what had happened, summoning more staff to lock down the old funhouse area. By the time they arrived in force, the funhouse was empty. Broken boards, shattered mirrors, and scattered footprints testified to the conflict. Yet there was no sign of the clown. Even the gate Rowan had passed through lay partially closed, as if the intruder had vanished into the night. Maintenance workers patched the entrance, reinforcing it with new boards. Extra security personnel scoured the perimeter. Dispatch lines still crackled with instructions, but no one could find any trace of the figure who had inflicted such terror. The rest of Nightfall Springs continued its festivities, mostly unaware of the danger that had played out in the deserted corner. Park management quietly ended dread hours a half hour early, citing technical difficulties. Guests complied without complaint, most assuming it was a routine closure. Few realized the staff had just scrambled to contain what could have turned into a far graver incident. In the days that followed, rumors spread among employees. Some insisted the clown was a rogue performer seeking notoriety. Others believed it might have been a drifter who knew the layout of the old funhouse. Still, there were those who whispered about a darker possibility. An individual not bound by rational motivations prowling the night in search of genuine fear. Rowan filed official reports and cooperated with local authorities who examined the sealed funhouse for clues. A couple of footprints and a single latex glove turned up, but little else. For the sake of public relations, the park downplayed the story, focusing on additional safety measures for the ongoing events. Rowan, for his part, found no comfort in the incomplete resolution. Each night at dread hours, he patrolled the park with heightened vigilance, scanning crowds for any glimpse of a grim clown face or tattered costume. He knew the shadowy corners of Nightfall Springs remained, places where someone determined and cunning could lurk undetected. Amid the festive lights and costumed visitors, a question lingered. Had the clown achieved the ultimate scare by evading capture? Or would a second encounter prove even more dangerous? That question haunted Rowan as he checked ride queues, tested locks on older facilities, and listened for anything out of the ordinary. Sometimes he wondered if he had truly glimpsed the clown again, only to find a harmless staff member in similar attire. Rationally, he believed that it was all in his imagination. Yet there were nights he found it difficult to dismiss the possibility of a silent observer watching him from the fringes, waiting for the right moment to resume the chase. Nightfall Springs resumed its normal operations once October passed, removing the seasonal decor and focusing on new attractions for the winter holidays. Still, the memory of that encounter in the abandoned funhouse left a subtle mark on the park's lore. Employees occasionally avoided that section of the property after hours, and some reported unexplained footsteps echoing in the locked corridors. Rowan did not discount their stories, even if he refrained from sharing his personal experience in full detail. It became a quiet legend, whispered among seasonal staff, the night a stranger in a clown costume lured security into the belly of a forgotten ride only to vanish when cornered. And though Rowan moved forward, supervising events, revising safety protocols, and greeting new hires, he never quite shook the feeling that the clown could return. If so, he would be ready no matter how well that malevolent grin hid among the park's attractions. Shadows still stretched beyond the Carnival Gates, and if the clown ever stepped out of those shadows again, Rowan intended to ensure the story ended differently.